I think that's where the process is.
Okay, let's give it a little bit of a pause, and then let's let, if there's other matters besides that for which the board wants to talk and discuss among itself. Are there any other comments at this point?
I'm not sure
Mr.
what
Barksdale?
I'm not sure what
We're waiting, I think, for the items that were identified as part of the motion from Ms. Lavoie. And I think Mr. Waxler was trying to go back through the contract to make sure, in response to what I think was a board question, is where are they addressed in the contract? He's going back and, trying to make sure he can do that, and then we'll come back to us. And so that work is being done, and rather than potentially, are there other things beyond just those components about the motion that people would like to discuss prior to Mr. Waxler coming back?
Yes.
Ms. Barksdale.
Regarding community input, I was a trustee that asked very early on for the administration to, and the administration was responsive in developing key touch points and community input for issues like this one. But in subsequent to that meeting, and the Office of Multicultural Outreach has done their work in this area. But subsequent to that meeting, we got the final framework on our AAFRs, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm very willing to stand corrected, but it is my understanding that the AAFRs, or framework for the AAFRs, outline an 18-month or year-long to 18-month process for changes like this one for communities, so that for the very reasons that we've heard and sort of enumerated tonight and by members of our community at large, giving people time to digest, to fully understand, to weigh in on changes like this one. I don't think this room is filled with people organized by somebody other than their own thoughts and caring concern for their community, their children. Are we, and I guess I have a rhetorical question to pose, I'm not sure who to ask this to, or it would be my hope that, rather than rush headlong, and it does feel rushed at this point, rush headlong into a proposal like this one, can we push the pause button, show up in the community as a board and with the administration with fully publicized or meetings with the opportunity for the community to attend, be heard, have the merits of this proposal explained and thoroughly put on the table what the details are with I's dotted and T's crossed. So it would be my hope that if we proceed, if we stay on this path, that we don't do so or don't approve a contract without first getting very clear community input in the community.
Hold on, folks. Mr. Guzman.
I don't necessarily disagree. I'm trying to pinpoint where in the motion does that fit in. We have a motion on the table, and you've asked to open discussion to what?
Basically, the motion was to decline.
No, I understand the motion.
And so I think that was the basis, I think, on which Ms. Barksdale is saying why she would support declining is because she feels like we should do that instead. Is that fair, Ms. Barksdale?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler.
Board members, just out of deference to time, I worked my way through page 8 of the contract, and I would identify A2, 1A2 for admissions, 1B8.
Hold on, Mr. Waxler. Let's just go slow so people that are looking at the contract can see. So 1A2 for admissions.
1B8, 1 idea 14 and 16, 1 idea 15 for security and health related to security. Again, this is just through page 8. If you want me to go back further, I certainly will. 15A for employment, 1A3 Exhibit B, 1A3 and Exhibit B for the proposed calendar. C idea 1F for special education and bilingual, that's on page 5. C idea 1 through 31, which would be all of the obligations of the CEO and IDEA. These are commitments that they are making. 1 idea point 16 and 1 idea point 17, plan for student activities and counseling. Again, board members, I've just gone through page 8. If you want me to go into the contract even further, just let me know. But I think this is evidence that the contract addresses these areas as required by the policy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Waxler. So we have, you still have a motion and a second to, I lost Ms. Boyles. Is she over there? I want to wait till she comes back. Okay, so we have a motion and a second can you give just the capturing the top words we have? To decline, can you read the motion, the second, I mean, the motion itself, the second motion? Which is the, yes, please, just make sure we're all clear what that says.
Annette LaVoy restated the motion to decline the contract based on two principles that did not meet the test of proper inclusion process. He requested administration to do a better job. This violates 7 of the 19 principles required of EL local, and we may not proceed on this. And then in addition, she identified 7 of the 19 decision elements did not meet.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Mr. Waxman, let's make sure from clear from procedural. If we, the board, let's go up one thing. If the board chooses not to support this motion, that doesn't necessarily automatically approve the contract either. This isn't one of those by default. It just allows the opportunity for discussion of the item that's posted for this evening. So Ms. LaVoy has proposed that we decline, but just not supporting that motion doesn't automatically presume that therefore there's board approval at this point of the item that's been posted for discussion this evening. Would that be true?
I think the answer to your question is yes. I was unable to hear Ms. Boyles state the motion, but I think, and Ms. LaVoy, help me out here, it sounds to me as if Ms. LaVoy's motion is to decline to approve the contract. And if the board votes to decline to approve this contract, then the board could still have conversations about a contract it wishes to approve that may be different than this one. And is that the question that you've asked?
Actually, it wasn't, but that's a good piece of it, because I think it actually does address, so we still could proceed with the item. And then the second part is, even if this motion was to be defeated, it doesn't automatically presume that the board will choose to approve whatever may get recommended from the administration. It's not, it just because you choose not to decline doesn't mean you choose to approve.
That is correct as well. Board would still need a motion on the floor to approve the contract, and then the board would have to figure out whether the contract in the current form or the contract in some amended form is a contract that the board wishes to approve.
So a vote potentially against the motion wouldn't necessarily be a vote for the motion, but just potentially could be an opportunity to hear from the superintendent about the proposal. Because you're right, it's going to be dependent on a motion coming forward to support the recommendation from the superintendent.
That is correct.
Okay, Ms. LaVoy.
Thank you. Mr. Waxler was correct in saying that the board faces a very tough decision tonight. Do we want a strong contract that keeps our promise to the students in East Austin? Do we want a strong contract that guarantees high-quality academics and special ed at the level that we want to see, or are we comfortable with some weaker language? For example, in response to one of the elements that I raised, the term generally is used in a contract. I haven't seen the word generally in a contract. That's not what I want to see in a contract. So I must say that I stand firm that we need a much stronger contract than version 7 that is in front of us tonight, and that I'm looking for a contract with higher academics for our students in East Austin, and I'm looking for a contract that provides the special education services that I believe we need. And I'd like to have us pause for a moment and look at some material that the superintendent gave us on special ed percentages. IDEA's average enrollment of special education students is 5%. At Allen, today, we have 11.3%. At Martin, 18.4%. Eastside Global, 16.2%. Eastside Green, 17.8%. IDEA, per the numbers from the superintendent, IDEA enrolls a far smaller percentage of special education students than we have in the 4 schools that we're looking at today. That's a terribly important point. And Exhibit A in the contract contains information on our curriculum and instructional program. It does not address special education. And I think that's a very serious weakness in the contract. And I think it really violates our own policy, and I think it's something important we should look at. Thank you very much.
Dr. Christopherson. Would you like to clarify just the issue of special ed, please?
Right. Mr. President, trustees of the board, I just also wanted to highlight that for AISD and for this other public school system, we have different models. I think different people have raised that as different approaches to how we educate kids and ensure that they're getting the kind of quality outcomes that the federal government, the state, and our local school boards and communities expect us to have. So I just wanted to be clear that much like both bilingual services and special education services, if you are a public school district in this country, you are required to provide those services. So we may disagree with the models and the approaches, but all of us have to do it. You cannot be a public school system in America and not do these things. So that's the first thing. We are statutorily required to serve all students. Now, one of the things about the model, the approach that different districts use, AISD, as this board well knows, has never hit the targets for the federal requirements under adequate yearly progress for special education. We overtest, we are above the acceptable levels, we exceed the caps, and these are things we've been working on since I became superintendent. But part of the difference between AISD and IDEA, and something that we're looking forward to learning about, is how they use their instructional model to actually limit the placement of students in special education that's more inclusively oriented, that works with children being able to manage and work through their special need so that they are not taking those modified state assessments that actually ends up, in our case in Austin, penalizing us so much so to the extent that we are now in a multi-year AYP challenge under the federal requirements. So they are required to address all needs for students, and that includes students with special needs and disabilities, and their performance and their outcomes around being able to work through the critical balance and the walk of Texas state accountability, which just flies in the face of federal accountability for special education, is a walk that they do in a much tighter way than AISD. And while we are working on it, our numbers are higher because we simply, and I'm just going to say it because I know this board has raised the issue with me multiple times, we over-identify African American students and we over-identify special education students into special education, and even some bilingual students. So we know that we have our own challenge, but just to be clear about it, our percentages and our numbers are our doing. I mean, we know this is a problem about the way we do our work. We have made some improvements in this area, but we are still exceeding the caps and things that, as this board knows, will rate AYP being, rate AISD not making adequate yearly progress as required by the federal statutes. So I do see that the numbers are bigger, but these are things that bubble up over a long time through our elementary system. Kids don't really exit in middle school, and it bubbles up higher in secondary in general. But I just wanted to be clear that we understood the difference in the model design.
Okay, and just, can I follow up one just question for you, is when you look at trying to proportionality, when you look at our other schools of choice, this is somewhat of a school of choice, you know, whether it's Lhasa, Ann Richards, Keeling, Fillmore, Pease, do all of our schools have the same percentage of each of these categories as the population from which they draw? And I guess maybe the broader question is are we as a board saying that we want all of our schools of choice to reflect the percentages from which the district provides? And I'm not sure, kind of more rhetorical, but do you know, maybe that's not a fair question, we haven't had the research, but I'm just, it's one of those that's a challenge about what's the program being targeted to provide. Does it provide the services for which the kids are there, but is there an expectation that we would have sort of proportionality of all demographic groups at every school of choice to reflective of whatever population from which they draw? I mean, what's your theory, I guess, in the sense of how we offer schools, some schools that have an element of choice to them?
Mr. President, trustees of the board, most of the schools of choice were created before I was superintendent. I'm not really sure what the intent of the past school boards were, what the intent was and how this gets represented. But what we know is for our school system, it's something that we track for every school, whether it's a school of choice or something more traditionally attendance area driven. And we also know that that for many, many years, our over-identification of certain populations in AISD actually, with that data, the board charged me in this school year to address the needs of those special populations. We went over that data in our retreat. You agreed that it was something that we needed to deal with and work on. And my point is simply that the models are different, so the percentages will be different. And while I think there are better ways, all of us can work to improve special education. I just think it's very hard to try to say that that we are serving more kids and some other school system or school is not. It's really their approach and how they work with the students and what those numbers really look like. In some ways, we have schools that really move kids actually out of needing regular special education services, and they're fully included in regular classrooms. And that's an approach that we're moving toward as an entire system, but we are clearly not there yet, as our data shows. And so I'm not sure what the intent of the other choice schools were in AISD and what boards did, but by and large, you're going to see smaller numbers at our choice schools for percentages of special ed.
And I'm just quickly looking, I'm looking at the AIS report for Ann Richards, and there's 526 kids last year, and the special ed population is too small to measure. It's not even quantified, and so it's a school of choice, and the question is, if they have a special ed child, I'm sure they have to serve them pursuant to the law, but we have to think about what that means in terms of what we're trying to achieve with every program we offer. Now, we still have a motion and a second to decline. I just want to let there's additional discussion on the motion at hand. Ms. Barksdale.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think you make a very good point. IDEA, as it is currently executed, is a school of choice. We're talking about bringing IDEA in to be an opt-out neighborhood school. So I think that as this discussion continues, we need to have that standard outcomes. And the measures that we're applying to IDEA, I think, are because they are a school of choice, and there are practices that go along with that explain numbers like this one. If the superintendent or if it is being purported that low special education student numbers are due to it being a school of choice, and I say let's keep that standard across the board and accept that schools of choice have different outcomes across the board, right?
Correct.
Now, when Mr. Tolkelson was here a few weeks ago, I asked directly if IDEA had served students with profound disabilities, severe or profound disabilities. I don't think I got an answer. So maybe just if the superintendent knows, or if someone could provide an answer for that. And the question at the time I posed in the framework of IDEAs having 100% of their kids matriculate to four-year universities, that number didn't square up with me with serving kids with moderate, severe, profound cognitive disabilities especially. If they have served those students, I'm interested in that outcome.
Dr. Starfin, do you have a feel for that?
Mr. President, trustee of the board, trustee Barksdale, I do remember that question. It's my understanding that he did respond, if I recollect correctly, and it was that they do serve students with special education needs, profound disabilities, and and kids that want to go to their school. So I do remember that answer. As far as the details around which kids and the square up around the 100% graduation rate, I can go back but I don't have it tonight, but I'd have to go back, and I'm sure, I know I'm happy to do that for the board, but to go through and look at what each graduate looked like when they graduated, and who had which kind of disability, to be able to track and see what specifically happened to those students. And I would hope that in the future we'll do that for all AISD schools too.
Okay, folks, we haven't even gotten to the agenda item as it is. We have a motion on the table to basically decline this particular, as I'm going to say, basically to not move forward with the agenda item that we've got proposed before us tonight, and preclude discussion of that and basically decline it. Sort of, Mr. Wax, would be fair to say, sort of summary judgment kind of thing, just sort of knock it out of hand and then just get to that. So if there absent further discussion, I think we had a vote on this particular motion in front of us. So yes, Mr.
Explain a no vote
Okay.
mean that you're not in favor of the motion to.
Yeah, let me take a shot at that. I mean, I think a yes vote, as proposed, would basically being we decline the contract as it's currently constructed. Doesn't preclude us from moving forward. Then we got to decide if we move forward the agenda and potentially come up with a different contract. A no vote would say that they're not going to. We could potentially still consider this contract as part of the agenda item that's going to come before us. So it's not precluding future discussion. It's just precluding basically a vote on the specific contract we have in our packet tonight, as it's currently constructed. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion to decline the contract as it's currently proposed in our packet, please raise your right hand. Opposed? Okay, the motion failed and 6-3 vote. So let's now move to the agenda item. Dr. Starfin.
Mr. President, trustees of the board, I'm presenting tonight on your action item entitled Annual Academic Facilities Recommendation, AAFR Idea in District Charter College Preparation Partnership with AISD. But before I do that, I actually just wanted to thank the board and the many, many people in the public that work toward bringing forward with us multiple ideas to address 5 of the 6 annual academic facilities recommendations for implementation in the 12-13 school year. I know there was a lot going on in the last meeting, but I wanted to be sure that the public understood that the board actually approved 5 issues that have been longstanding issues for the district. Everything from overcrowding in North Central to helping us address graduation and dropout rates in 2 of our highest need high schools, Travis and Lanier High Schools. And there are many other things in between, including expanding our dual language immersion programs and one-way design. So I know that was a lot of work too, and there were a lot of people in the public that worked on those ideas as well. And as a result, we had some solutions that you were able to consider and approve. So we just really thank you for your hard work on that too, especially all those trustees that were out late at night, every night of the week, working with us to come up with recommendations that met your approval. So tonight is the final piece of the 6 AAFRs, where we talk about the potential to establish an in-district charter partnership with AISD. And I just want people to know that you're right. There are many, many challenges, some longstanding and historical. Someone mentioned going all the way back to the closure in 2009 and several years before that even. The challenges are so large and so deep that the history that we're struggling with is something that is indeed going to require a continued empowerment of the debate and the issues that need to be addressed to successfully serve every single school and every single child and family in this area. There is plenty of work to do, hordes of work for us to do, and it doesn't end and stop with this one design. There's a lot that we still have to do, even in a transition model, that we would need to work to ensure that kids that we have today get the highest quality education that we can provide, and that this debate and discussion cannot be squashed by anyone, and nor should it. It should continue so that we can make sure that every child is going to have the opportunity to have them get the quality education they deserve. Now, when I was selected to be superintendent of AISD, the board did identify a number of big picture goals that were the basis of this district's strategic plan. There were 4 goals. They were clear, straightforward, and pretty easy to follow. 1 was to have students performing at or above grade level. 2 was to eliminate, not close, not narrow, but eliminate the achievement gaps between student groups, to prepare students for college, career, and life, and to have all schools, and by the way, all of these things were have all students performing, all achievement gaps closed, all kids prepared for college, career, and life, and all schools meeting and exceeding state and federal accountability standards. And these are the goals that have driven our work, my work as a superintendent, but this entire administration and all the principals and teachers and support staff that have been working at least since the board approved that plan. In that strategic plan, there are also measurable outcomes that are incredibly aggressive. They're more aggressive than the state. They're more aggressive than the federal standards. And that's because this board told me that you wanted our schools to be better than any standard the state or the federal government could put forward. Now, I know that it may seem that, that there is a lot of continued discussion to go, and I agree. We want to continue the discussion. And there are many people that are speaking about this issue and have been, and I hope will continue as we continue to work on schools in East Austin. But there's also a silent majority that for a very long time has been voting with its feet, leaving not only this attendance area and this assignment area, but the entire East Austin side of town. They often show up in schools in West Austin, and they also leave our district to attend charter schools and private schools. What is sobering about the data and the information about the East Side Memorial assignment area is that it is looking like about 2/3 of people who could be choosing the high school actually end up somewhere else. And whether those people are here speaking to you tonight, but I also know they have come to speak to me, not just since this issue has come up, but at the behest of Mr. Guzman and other people. I have been meeting with them for the last 2 years. And people talk a lot about what we need to do to improve and to also offer another choice within the system for people to consider. And I want to just thank everyone. I want to thank everyone for participating, for helping us actually shape the design more, to ask tough questions of our partner, to bring issues to the table so our board could shape a better contract, and to also continue to shape the design. Because while we're talking about building a new middle school, enhancing an elementary, and continue to build on the work of the high school, there are still many schools and many challenges that this good work can go to help solving. Now, when I started last week, we talked about this adoption of the strategic plan, but I just want to, highlight for people how it actually works for the guidance to the superintendent. We have the strategic plan, and then the board goes one step further, and they say to me, every school year, we're going to give you priorities for this school year. There are 4 for this school year, and they duplicate. They've actually been named already for the next school year, and they say this, that the board wants new delivery models to enhance our portfolio of options in AISD. You want us to refine our human capital strategies to ensure that we have the highest quality people in front of our kids and leading our schools. That you want us to improve the district and school climate, and that you deliberately named 4 areas where we have been doing some pretty challenging work, where special populations like African American students, language learners, and even advanced academic students are to receive more academic supports and strategies to lift these populations. And I just want to, acknowledge Ms. Bradley and Mr. Guzman and Lori Moya when we were back, even in my first year, working on the East Austin Schools Plan, going out every night talking to the community about the design for East Austin. It was built around 4 major areas that we've been working on since that plan was approved. Early childhood, building strong pre-K-12 vertical team articulation, access to technology, and college and career opportunities. That plan was the beginning of our work, and we have been working to implement it every step of the way. And the board has received white papers and updates on that plan at least every month, if not more often than that. But we have been talking about it consistently in our work. And it was pretty explicit that we had to have an articulated plan, that just guesswork or doing what we felt was the right thing was not good enough. And the community helped us build that plan. And so when we talk about East Austin, it's not just one vertical team, it's almost like 3. It's the 3 of these trustees who were there with us developing that plan. The board took another step. Once we got the plan and worked through some of the areas, you approved a specific, dedicated, attention type plan to strengthen the education foundation of Travis and Eastside Memorial vertical teams that talked about building a better core curriculum. And I just want to thank our academics office for really tearing stuff up and putting it back together to get us ready for STAR. That we should have a results-driven, no excuses culture that actually prepares kids for college and citizenship. Not some kids, not a few kids, but all kids. Y'all don't ever give me a choice to pick some over the others. So a culmination of this work led to a pretty deep discussion where the board looked at the adoption and sort of the revisions of an in-district charter policy, EL local. And in January of last year, and I have, and these things are well documented in your materials, the board did work to vote on a policy that would allow the school district to start putting some teeth to what an in-district charter would look like. The board policy committee, led by Ms. Moya, attended by I think Mr. Schneider, Ms. Lavoie, and Ms. Bradley pretty normally, pretty consistently, worked on that policy as they do many, many others. We started going on site visits. I know Trustee Torres and Ms. Bradley went to the Northeast. Other people went south. We went all over looking to be sure that we had, if we were going to consider anything like this, that we really knew what we were getting into and who were the best of the best, knowing that there was a lot of good data out there about how charter schools don't work and don't outperform ISDs or other public institutions in the country. So when we went through all this, the board actually authorized on June 20th that I explore a partnership specifically with IDEA Public Schools to collaborate in planning for effective, successful early college preparatory systems and designs. So to be clear, at least from my perspective, I'm getting lots of signals from our trustees who actually represent the people that these are things that we want to do, and we've taken actions along the way. We knew as an administration, we didn't want to just take anyone's word that X school or system was better than another. We posted a request for applications over the summer to garner additional information about public charter schools and to see who had interest in working with us, knowing that when you work with Austin, you got to work with a lot of people in Austin, and we wanted to be sure we were looking at the right kinds of people. Now, we received 3 applications, and only 2 were college preparation. They were existing open enrollment charters, but part of the understanding is if you were going to come and work with AISD, you could not be an open enrollment charter. You had to be an in-district charter, and you had to work in partnership with us. Now, since the Facility Master Plan Task Force completed its work last spring, I've spent countless hours every single night and standing meetings during the day, of which I have not missed any, to ensure that I was hearing every single thing everyone was saying about facility master planning. And the public said this: don't close schools for efficiency's sake. Look at academics and balance it with operations. And this is why today, in a plan like this, whereas the task force had talked about potential closure of 4 schools in the east, just in Mr. Guzman's area alone. It was Go Valley, Ortega, I think Brook was discussed, and Allen, that somehow, some way, we would have to pick a few of these schools to consider for closure. And in this design, we really felt like we were able to do something that would allow families to help increase the enrollment numbers at other schools and bring forth, if you will, other designs that would allow another school to stay open, because we would potentially be able to bring in new average daily attendance, new ADA dollars and numbers into the system. Now, is our process perfect? Absolutely not. And that's why we worked all year to come up with the process we start in January of 2012. But the board did approve in May. We sat down with all the folks after the task force work, and we understood that if we were going to do anything for 12-13, decisions need to be made in December, and that the timeline would be the timeline, and that I was to come back in September at our regular meeting and try to lay out all of the administrative recommendations around everything from, which ended up being bond work, a framework, and even saying then that there are specific schools and programs that would need to be affected if you were thinking of actually making real the priorities of this board this year.
Dr. Starpos, can everybody hear in the back when the...
Yeah.
when the
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, let's make
Yeah.
sure, that, 'cause I know there's noise, I can hear up here, but I just want to make sure people in the back can hear. Okay.
So over the past few weeks, as we've heard concerns about and questions about entering into a partnership, I have a master list, and there are a lot of things that people have told me. I mean, and my president has helped me try to gather as many of the concepts people have. Like, some people are saying, just so you get a sense of the pros and cons, I'll just highlight 3 just to give you a sense of what we're looking at. Some people say we're just solidly, philosophically opposed to any kind of charter talk at all, in district or otherwise. We don't support it. And then there are others who say that, you know, that this shouldn't come as a surprise to Austin, because Austin sees itself as being on the forefront of innovation, doing things like girls' schools, even if the research isn't popular and supported, doing magnets in ways that allow for us to focus on accelerated achievement, and so on. So there's a lot of back and forth about issues like that. I heard from some people that said they would never send their kid to a charter-like idea, and then there are others that said I wouldn't have left AISD if I had had an option like this. Some people say that the labor practices of the design aren't consistent with AISD. I've actually had teachers call and say, I would love to work in a school like that because I want to see my compensation be structured differently, and just having one option would help us do that. We don't have to do it system-wide, but can we have some options? I mean, I think that there's been a lot of talk about even should we have the kind of transfer policy that we have today. Some people have said, keep the transfers. I want to be able to exercise diversity choice. Some have said, I want to be able to choose other schools in AISD. Others have said, eliminate transfers altogether and make everybody go to this area school, which would be different to everybody else in AISD. So I've got a huge list of pros and cons and conversations that people have shared with me. What I know is that everyone's not in perfect agreement. But what I also know is we have tons of work where even if we disagree with parts of the design or concept, that there's plenty of work that we can share to improve the entire vertical team. Now, I know that on the table tonight are some other areas that we could discuss and I could spend a lot of time talking about. But if you actually look in the agenda item, there were some pretty big categories that I tried to at least give background and chronicle so that everyone would have for their background and information. And it's based on these things that we are recommending that we do an in-district charter. It started with the East Austin Schools Plan, then the plan to strengthen the foundation, that the board gave us direction to have AAFRs for this school year, that we have a reconstitution plan, that while I know it's state accountability in Texas is off the charts, it is the world that we live in and that we have to be responsible for it. That we have a history with in-district charters and even the impact of non-district open enrollment charters in this vertical team assignment area and other schools across the district. But in all cases of big decision points, whether it was the policy or working on a partnership with IDEA, I had a 9-0 vote. Everybody sitting at this table voted for me to work in this direction. And so it's with that guidance that we are here today. It's also with the data that we have, and simply from my opinion as the superintendent who has to lead and do this work, and in my evaluation be held to these outcomes, that I know we have not done everything we should have done years ago, decades ago, and not even today. And I am fully committed, no matter what the decision is tonight, and I support and I will honor anything this board asks me to do, that even if the decision is one way or the other, I stand ready to continue the conversations that were started before my time, that were started with the task force, that started after the task force, during our meetings today, and I will come back out again and work on all the other issues that are still longstanding and that this solution will not solve. There are many, many other things that we have to work on. So to be clear, for the 2012-13 school year, the recommendation works this way. IDEA would offer grades K, 2, and 6 at Allen Elementary only. In subsequent years, it would expand each year so that by school year 2018-19, the program would serve all students in grades K-5 at the current Allen attendance zone and all students in the East Side Memorial assignment area in grades 6 through 12. Any remaining seats would be available to other students in the East Side Memorial area and then to students district-wide through lottery if they'd like to experience this option. Students in pre-K and grades 3 through 5 who live in the current Allen attendance zone would be assigned to Go Valley in Ortega, helping them with their enrollment numbers to ensure that we are getting efficiency in these schools. In the future years, students who opt out of IDEA would attend Martin in 6 through 8 and Travis in 9 through 12, because our data shows us that when people are given the choice, and they are through the current open enrollment design for Eastside Memorial, they tend to choose Travis first. And that we know that through the plan to support to strengthen the foundation for schools, and I'm looking at Ms. Moya because we've talked about this extensively, that we will continue to support Travis High School. Transportation is already provided. Every kid who chooses to go outside of Eastside Memorial to the schools that were listed under the state transfer option design when the school was closed and opened again, we provide transportation. IDEA would provide another option in the portfolio. We have schools that have pretty aggressive, innovative designs. Some are programs within schools, like Global Studies. Others are independent schools in and of themselves, like Ann Richards. And in this case, we're talking more of an independent school design that we would be in partnership with IDEA. I know that people have said and raised a lot of questions, which, again, I am more than happy to continue to answer. There are a few that I just wanted to make clear. I've heard of IDEA Public Schools being referred to as corporate or private. It isn't. It's a public school system. Ms. Moya, had copies of the Texas Comptroller of Public Accountants, all the data that shows them as a public school system in the state of Texas, and we have all the details on that information as well. It's all made available to the public, but I just want people to be clear that it's not a private organization. We do have a private-public partnership in Ann Richards School. I just was in D.C. doing a fundraiser there, but it is considered a public-private partnership. And then we have other partnerships that are public and sort of not-for-profit or nonprofit with a foundation, which is what we do in the Global Studies program. So we have lots of different designs. None are better or worse, but they are what they are, and we can make them all successful. I know that some people have said things like, IDEA doesn't offer arts or extracurricular. That it isn't true, but they are smaller than us conceptually. We have a tendency to design large, comprehensive high schools, and their high school does have fine arts, does have music, does have other extracurricular activities, and of course, it's our choice as a school system on how much we want to support the design of the school and to influence it. And I do think that if families want that, I know that I'm open. I absolutely want to support it. And I know that IDEA and our conversations are going to support it too. I think I've said it before. They are required statutorily, just like any other public school system, to serve bilingual, to have bilingual services and special education services. And also just to say that, that we know that we're not there perfectly. We are going to work as hard as I have since the day I walked in the door, working through many East Austin issues. And as Mr. Guzman knows and Ms. Bradley knows, that goes across all of their trustee districts. And I know that it spills often into Ms. Moya's as well. So for those people who work often with me, that work consistently with me, they know that this is one small step toward another piece of the East Austin Schools plan, and that the rest of that plan still needs to be implemented if we want to see great outcomes for all kids and all families. And so for what it's worth, I just appreciate everyone just considering everything. You had 6 huge issues on the table last Monday, and you've worked through 5, and I know you'll work through what you believe is the right thing to do tonight. I will support you in any way, and our recommendation still stands within the agenda item and available for your action. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion at this time, and my motion reads as follows. That the board approve the attached agreement, attachment 6, with IDEA Public Schools to provide a K-12 in-district charter college preparatory program within the Austin Independent School District, beginning with grades K2 and 6 at Allen Elementary Schools for the school year 2012 and 13, and that will grow yearly until 2018 and 19. When IDEA becomes a 6-12 campus at the Eastside Memorial, resulting in Allen becoming a K-5 campus. And that the Board of Trustees designate new assignment areas for Allen Elementary students to Go Valley Elementary and Ortega Elementary, specifically as follows. 1, for the year 2012 and 13, Go Valley Elementary will receive Allen Elementary School pre-K and grade levels 3rd, 4th, and 5th students residing in the current western portion of that attendance zone, roughly bounded by the current attendance zone boundaries on the west and north, Airport Boulevard and Baum Road on the east, and Ed Bluestein Boulevard on the south, who do not wish to attend the IDEA in-district charter. And 2, Ortega Elementary School will receive Allen Elementary School pre-K and grade levels 3rd, 4th, and 5th students residing in the remaining eastern portion of the current Allen attendance zone. So move.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Second, Ms. Moya. Okay, let's open up for comments and questions. And what I'm going to suggest is, I know, folks, there's probably a lot of emotion about that. Let's let the board have a chance to weigh in, individual board members. And what I'm going to suggest is we go around. I'm going to let y'all kind of raise your hand. But we had discussion about this to some degree last week. We've had discussion. I think my sense is that the board understands the deal that Dr. Christopher's recommending, whether they like it or don't like it or smell it, but they understand what it is. And I would hope that as you make your comments, you address kind of the substance, what the basis, if you support or oppose, and what the basis for that is. Or if there's any questions you have, just to make sure if you don't understand it, that you can get some clarification. But Dr. Christopherson, would it be fair to say that at this point, that's your recommendation? And you might address questions about, make sure people understand it, but this is what you're putting forth as the administration's best effort for action by the board?
It is one part of the best effort you would put forward by the board. So yes, that is the recommendation, and I'm also recommending, as if you read, a want for consideration, again, that we continue these discussions, that we leverage all of the interest in this to continue to work on East Austin 110%. So it was, while it's not part of the motion, it is the administrative consideration, the last paragraph on the agenda item. And so it's not in the motion, but I just want to be clear that I'm saying both. And so this action is just one part of the, that helps address the East Austin Schools Plan, but we're going to continue with strengthening the foundation, and we're going to continue to work on future AAFRs and other programs that need to strengthen schools in District 2. Thank you.
So let me, Mr. Guzman, let's make sure it clears. I think Mr. Guzman read the motion.
And that is
What
the
you're,
motion.
what you're indicating is a commitment, if I'm understanding you right, I'll make sure that you would work with and there, I don't know if and the reason I'm trying to do this, I don't think y'all have seen what's on the administrative considerations, but would work in partnership with the community to address sort of the rest of East Austin. So whatever, kind of not just how the IDEA program would fit in, but sort of the non-IDEA. And when I'm reading in here is that District 2, which is Mr. Guzman's district, which is really the rest of it, would benefit from fleshing out additional solutions for possible consideration in what we're calling an AAFR, an academic and facility recommendation for next year. So for 13-14, so that this would be a commitment at the beginning, whatever way this turns out, that you're committing to working with the community to address all of the other challenges that we think exist, and whether this passes or not, and what the implications of that are, making sure that we address it appropriately in East
Yes, sir,
Austin.
that we continue to address
Okay,
it.
so it's not
and
part of the
work that
motion, but
through.
it is a commitment on your part.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Guzman, are you comfortable with that? That's consistent with you. I think that's consistent with what your belief has been all along. Is
It's a vision. It's a larger vision that I have and other board members have, and we've talked about it. But yeah, it is.
okay? Thank you. Okay, so let's go around, let board members weigh in, and then we'll take a vote if that's appropriate and see where people are. Do people want to have a comment or indicate basis for support or opposition on this particular motion? Mr. Snyder.
Dr. Sarf and I listened with interest to what you were saying, because one of the things that I've repeatedly asked for is a statement as to why we are doing this versus what we could do by ourselves. That is something that's required in our EL policy. That is something that I have yet to see a clear answer for. And,
Oh, do you want,
excuse me, if I may finish, please.
I didn't know you were
Thank you.
finished.
And I was most interested in what you had to say about the data. Given that you refuted a report by someone that this district has worked with for quite a number of years and has generally taken their advice in very good stead, someone that we respect a lot, or some of us respect a lot. And specifically the mention of a college preparatory academy. I'd like to read to you one of the things that was in the Valley Monitor in the November 12th edition, where, according to what Mr. Torkelson has stated, only 1 in 10 of his graduates goes to school in a college environment, mainly UT Pan Am, and has a 3.0 or greater GPA. According to him, actually half have less than a 2.0 GPA. I don't call that a college preparatory environment, or at least the results of it.
Hold on, folks. Mr. Snyder.
And for it to be a statement by the founder of this charter, and for us not to have considered that, indicates to me that our staff didn't perform due diligence in examining the data to reach an agreement with these folks. I've also looked at some of the data both from TEA and the AIS reports and the data that's available from the controller's FAST reports as well too. And one of the things that's very clear to me is that disregard whether it's based on 2 years of data, 3 years of data, you know, whatever method you want to use to reach that, IDEA doesn't even serve the same kind of folks that we have in East Austin. And their students they have in the Valley have little to no mobility, whereas the AISD schools that are over there all have a great amount of mobility. And, you know, I'm, again, back to the point of, you say that there's good data to back up why we're proposing IDEA, but when I look at the data, and TEA data, FAST data, data that's provided by Dr. Fuller's and others, it's like, why are we going here? I mean, it shouldn't have been, to me, an option to begin with. So, you know, I personally believe that there may be a need for a charter, but we need to clearly state what it is. We need to work with the community to define what that's going to be and not rely on an outcome that at least seems to me to have been predisposed in some way.
Dr. Sharpton, are there any of those points that you'd like to address? I know that referring to the study that Mr. Snyder referred, we actually got a response. I don't know if you would like to address that, or if you just want to let that.
Mr. Williams, that's not the study I was referring to. I mentioned Dr. Fuller's study, which Dr. Sharpton refuted, but the other data came from TEA, it came from FAST. It's not the study that I think you're referring to.
Okay, well, yeah, there were a couple elements. I thought the college ready part was there. Hold on a second. So, Dr. Sharpton, is there anything you want to respond to that? Because it sounds like Mr. Snyder, I think would be fair to say, would be opposed to this particular motion. I don't know if there's anything you want to weigh in on this, or at this point, or just let it continue, the conversation continue.
I'm happy to just shed a little light on some things. I wrote down 3 things. I'm not sure I caught them all, but I will say this. The first was a question that was, and please redirect me if I didn't get it exactly correct, but why aren't we doing this ourselves? I mean, that's sort of the general question. You know, we didn't do and Richards by ourselves. We didn't do some of our new programming at even Aikens or Austin High by ourselves. Partners are important, and our lesson in AISD is when we have great partners who are willing to grow with us, be in partnership with us, work through issues with us, we just get better outcomes for kids. And so in doing this, while I understand that it's another public school and that we will be in partnership with a public school, we are doing it ourselves in partnership with them. It's not a turnkey model. We're not going to close the doors at Allen and pass someone the keys and, you know, and find out what it looks like at the end of the school year. There's a lot of other things that we have to work through that we're interested in making sure that we do right, even by just having it at the elementary level, start with an attendance area design is a very important part of what we think is going to challenge all of us to do a better job at. And in doing the design, as you can tell, even General Counsel knows the details of the program inside and out, you know, whether it's our finance officer or the curriculum people, it doesn't matter. Everyone is very close, has hands-on in the model. We're not leaving anything to chance. And so just like everything else that I think AISD does when they do it well, they are really doing it with a partner that can help push the envelope on how to create a better design. So while we might agree to disagree on that issue, and some people may always disagree, I do believe that we're doing this ourselves. We're doing it in partnership with someone that wants to push the envelope on ensuring that kids graduate and they have an opportunity with college and life after graduation. The college preparation discussion, and even the data, which, you know, I won't as y'all know, even on the day of any of the studies or, comments that people have made, we've been very responsive. I want to thank the University of Texas, Dr. Martyr in particular, the co-director of UTeach, and also a professor of physics at the University of Texas, who painstakingly walked through all of the data points. And I think at some point, should we move forward or not move forward? And he did a great job of helping us understand not just where IDEA falls in all Texas schools, but how Eastside Memorial falls in comparison to those things. And so while, yes, we talked about mobility and those sorts of things, we were finding that the school that was most like, the high school in AISD that was most like the mobility of IDEA was Anderson High School. And so, and this work, and I have great respect for anybody who's going to study and look at these things, but Dr. Martyr in particular did, and I provided all of this to the board, a very comprehensive look at all of this work, the claims of any study, and technically, I would argue is not a huge proponent of charter schools in general, but that he did go through and look at some of the assertions about IDEA, and at the end of the day, he left us with statements like, the mobility IDEA is not unusually high, and in fact is much lower than many AISD campuses. When we looked at the attrition rate used by one researcher, which was kind of a novel way to look at things, but we did run it through, the attrition rate at Eastside Memorial would be 68% according to that model, and the graduation rate would be no higher than 32%. So, and that gave me great pause, because we have state formulas, we have things that have been vetted that the state agrees to. I would like to see us use those kinds of formulas, but as people test their theories, which is fine, I respect that, it does lead to different outcomes that make things less clear for the rest of the public. And Dr. Martyr also found that IDEA schools outperformed most other high schools regardless of their level of poverty, of which we outlined in the response to the board, and highlighted the state's definition of college readiness, of which IDEA is held to that standard too. I'm sure that many people will have lots of disagreements with even Dr. Martyr's approach to the research, which he kept confined to very specific questions to help us analyze whether or not this was a good idea for AISD. And so I think there were a lot of respected people that also had things to say. They may or may not ever get quoted or highlighted for their work, but they are well respected as well in Austin and in their various universities. So we have a couple of different ways to look at it. It, again, depends on what you want to do as a board. And so we have done the diligence. Are they perfect? No. But, but to your question about, what his quote was in the paper, meaning Mr. Torkelson, I have to just ask the question of ourselves. And I am happy to vet all of these things. But when was the last time we tracked children into college? When was the last time any trustee, past or present, could say, including the superintendent, when a kid leaves X high school, this is how they're performing, and we're going to change what we teach to make sure they have a better college experience? We don't know that information. Some principals might know some, but that's not a standard that we hold our high schools to. So in a way, I respect them for not letting go of the child once they graduate them. They follow them into college, And it's a practice and an approach for a district the size of Austin. If we could get our arms around that too and work with our universities and colleges to actually finally have the kind of connection where we do better in our pre-K-12 design, so in college they don't have to be in remediation, so they do get good grade point averages and are successful. I mean, it's hard for me, while their data might not be perfect, it's hard for me to fault them for following kids past our obligation that we typically do as public schools in America. So you're right, he said what he said, and he said it because he knows. We don't know as a district. And what I'm proposing is as part of, and it's not just about Allen and Eastside Memorial, having a thought partner in this where they get better and we find ways to nail these parts of our work just will make Austin extraordinary. And until we do that, you know, I know our work isn't done. So we don't have to work with them. We know this. We've looked at UT. Y'all know you've looked at KIPP. You looked at, God, there was another group I saw on something in our history. Roland Fryer from Harvard. And, you know, each time we kind of get to this point and we stop. And I'm not saying this is what we should do always in every elementary, middle school, and AISD. It's one option for one area for us to get started. And as far as following through with kids through college, gosh, I want to learn that practice. I want that to be the norm for every high school principal and every high school in Austin, so we can backtrack from that and fix what we're doing as early as pre-K to make it possible for kids to be more successful in college.
Okay, board members, I want to make sure everybody has a chance to weigh in and basically give, you know, full chance. I don't want to, what I prefer avoid is sort of a back and forth between board members on individual issues, but make sure everybody has a chance to sort of substantially weigh in. It's already 10:30, and I know we have some students here that I think may be taking finals tomorrow. Yes. So we need to make sure we're being respectful of their time and getting to a conclusion as quickly as we can. Thank you all for being here. I hope you all study before tonight. So other people that want to, Ms. Moya.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify a couple of points that I've heard throughout the evening and at other times. Someone tonight mentioned the PEAMS number that Eastside Memorial retained after the TEA closed Johnson High School a couple of years ago. And one of the things I wanted to make real clear was that the school district asked TEA in the state of Texas to allow the former Johnston High School to get a new PEAMS number just like the new campus was going to get. And TEA refused. So what happened was, just like our speaker earlier tonight said, the campus started out with one strike against them, although she didn't say that, but they started out with one strike against them. And so when we talk about that, I'm glad we remember that, because it's important to remember that when this happened, you know, that the state of Texas put Eastside Memorial, Johnson High School, in that position with one strike against them. And so I'm glad you remember, and I want us to always remember. Because that's one of the things that has caused some of the issues that have continued to occur, including the requirement to have a reconstitution plan. So I just wanted to mention that. I've heard comments over a long period of time about our tax dollars going to charter schools. And I wanted to mention this because I think it's important to understand that charter schools are considered public schools. So they receive state funding, and what happens is that, at least my understanding, is that the allotment of dollars that would be assigned to any student in Austin ISD or any other public school district, should that child go to a charter school, that allotment, whatever that dollar amount is, goes with that child to that charter school. So all that to say is that currently with with this several, how many, I forget how many thousand, 4,000, I forget the number of students that are actually leaving, over 4,000 students that are actually leaving Austin ISD and going to charter schools, and that equates to about $26 million in state funding that would be coming to Austin ISD. It's important to remember that because those are tax dollars. And part of those tax dollars is the $1.3 billion of new money that the Austin ISD has sent to the state in the form of recapture. So yeah, I'm saying all of that just as a point of clarification so that you guys have the whole picture as far as how this whole system works. I heard someone tonight, a student tonight, say something that I was so glad to hear, which was, and he was on a full ride to the University of North Texas. Because what he highlighted is one of the things that's missing in a lot of conversations coming out of the school district across the district. He was very right to say that there are a lot of people in this school district and across this city that choose to look badly on our schools in East Austin and other schools with high minority populations and high poverty. A lot of people choose to look at us and our students as if we're not doing our jobs and that the kids can't achieve. And what we see across the district with our minority children is that they can succeed. We've got children from other schools in this district who are on full rides to MIT, full rides to Stanford, and those kids are minority kids. So you know, we do have to change the conversation about how the people in this school district view our students, because our kids deserve to be treated with respect, because the students in this district do a lot of real good work. We do have some that aren't achieving at the same levels, and those kids also need to have better quality given to them. But I think it's important to recognize, and it would be nice to hear about those kids that are doing so well. It'd be great when the school district sends out those press releases talking about the achievements of our kids, that they actually print them, but they don't get printed. So I wanted to mention that, and I wanted to give some kudos to the young man that made that statement, because he's absolutely right. And the performance of the kids, you know, speaks for itself. We just have to keep delivering the message. And, you know, there are a lot of people across the state who say that public schools don't tell their story well enough. And so that's one of the things that we all have to do, is tell our story better. And so those are the things that I wanted to mention. Because I think it's important that we talk about those things, and I think it's important to clarify some of the issues related to how charter schools are funded, and what actually occurred when it came to the PEIMS number way back a few years ago, because it's important to remember that the state of Texas did not allow Eastside Memorial, the Johnson campus, to start fresh. They caused that school to start with one strike against it.
Okay, we still have a motion and a second. If further discussion in favor or in opposition to the motion at this point? Ms. Barksdale.
I'm not used to this construct and discussing of whether I'm in favor or opposed to. Right now, I'm interested in getting whatever it is we're going to move forward with, or not, or maybe not move forward with, right for the district. So I'm not sure what I'm allowed to talk about.
Sure, go ahead.
What, is that just open, or?
Yeah, it's open. I mean, the motion's on the
Okay.
table, so we're discussing the motion.
Okay. I still have questions about the contract and would like to go through those and actually make some friendly amendments to the motion in relation to the contract. So is now the time to do that, or do we need to hear from others first?
We can hear from that. Let's be prepared to make sure we get the motions.
Okay.
So,
I'll wait for some paper to get lined up here. Okay, our board secretary is ready. And I will refer to some questions I sent to the administration that the administration did answer. Thank you. and then cross-reference those with the contract, and then make those friendly amendments I'd like to see to the motion. So my question was, how will expenses not expressly outlined in the contract be handled? Could give some examples, but since there are some expenses specifically enumerated in the contract and some not, my question was, how will those expenses be handled? And the answer was, expenses not expressly outlined in the contract will be borne by IDEA unless bought back by IDEA from the district at the district's actual cost, and it kind of goes on to explain what that means. That is in contrast to what is listed in the actual contract. So again, my question was, expenses not outlined in the contract, how will those be handled? The administration's response says that those will be handled by IDEA, but if we go to the actual contract on page 10, and maybe I'm conflating two things here, so I'll look to our counsel maybe to help me answer this question. And if I am, then I will separate out what my friendly amendment would be. On page 10 of the contract, under governance, the contract reads, subject to the terms of this agreement, the operation, oversight, and decision-making shall be conducted solely by the IDEA Board of Directors. Other than as provided in this agreement, IDEA shall not be subject to any AISD policy or procedure. Further, IDEA representatives and directors shall meet with AISD representatives or members of the Board of Trustees on a quarterly basis to report on progress of the school and to address any matters of concern. That's the only place I could find where it was outlined that we revert back to IDEA rather than the district to decide how those things are guided. So I'll make my question very narrow. If we are proceeding with this language of governance that we will be at the mercy of the IDEA Board of Directors, how can the administration say with confidence that things that are not enumerated in the contract, including costs, will be guided by what AISD believes is the case?
Hold on, folks.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Wexler.
So you're going to have to go to other parts of the contract, Ms. Barksdale, for transportation, security services, what have you. But also, you mentioned buyback services. So they're specifically addressed on page 7, number 17.
Page 7, hang on, let me get there.
Sure. Where it says buyback services if available and if requested by IDEA from AISD at AISD's actual cost for access to student support services, including but not limited to student assessment materials, school nursing, counseling, diagnostic, special education, and related services.
Okay.
Okay. So, so help me with the next one then, ma'am.
Okay, so you're saying that number 17 covers the notion that any expenses at all, not enumerated in this contract, are the sole responsibility of IDEA.
Right. That is exactly what we're saying, but it may be buyback, which is what you
Right.
identified, and that provision indicates that the buyback will be based on whether they request it, based on whether or not we have it available, and if we do, then it's at our actual cost. We're not making money off of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, that makes that clear, but so maybe you can help me with my follow-up to that question?
I'll try.
Sure, thank you. Again, regarding governance, on page 11, let's see. IDEA representatives and directors shall meet with AISD representatives and members of the board on a quarterly basis to report the progress of the school. So that relates to the question that I sent to the administration that again was answered. And that is regarding high-level grievances from parents or students. And I wish I could find my own question here, but the question essentially, I'll just give the essence of it. If there are high-level grievances on the part of parents and students, my question was, who will handle those? And is it the IDEA board or is it AISD? I think the administration's response was it is the IDEA board. IDEA would prefer to handle those?
Is that,
I'm happy to.
if you don't mind, I don't
Yep.
have the response right in front of me, so I just want to be sure.
Dr.
You-
Christopherson.
You do or don't?
I don't.
Okay, I'm just trying to help move this along. Yeah, so what we know is that the process, and what they've agreed to, is the process is very similar to ours. I said, I think after the commissioner closed Pearson, I had like a high-level grievance that came up for another school program that was located in Austin High School. And so there's a process. It starts with talk to the teacher. I mean, it does start as basic as talk to the teacher or the staff member, the principal, then the associate soup type, and it moves up. So when it gets to the high level, this is where it's still within IDEA, and when it gets to the superintendent of their district, he sees it the same way I see it. You see it on paper, you see the two sides of the case, and you make a decision, right? Mm-hmm. The next thing that happens, if it's a high-level grievance and someone disagrees with the superintendent, which is what I kind of inherited this particular one when the last superintendent voted one way and the parents still disagreed, it went to the board, right? So in this case, it can go to their board. Mm-hmm. What they will do is, if it's heard by them, they come to Austin, they're in Austin, and what we do as our own board is, because, we have to figure out a date where everybody can be here and everybody gets that negotiated by general counsel. They agree on a date and you can hear the high-level grievance. That's what they've agreed to do and that's what they're willing to do. What we've talked about beyond that, which isn't in the contract, but I just want to be clear, that IDEA has no authority to unilaterally remove or expel a student or deny a kid admission. They have to come to me and I have to actually approve it and understand why this might even be considered or why it's being brought forward. So they don't have any sole authority in that respect, and that is what we've outlined in our agreement. But what we haven't outlined in the agreement, but what we've talked about is how do we get, if beyond, in the spirit of ensuring that there's still a lot of AISD board ownership, that instead of just having it go straight up to IDEA, which they will do, they will own all their responsibility, but that it would be great if we had representatives from their board and our board where you could hear the high-level grievance together. And so the answer is still, it is within, it's totally within their structure. It's very similar to ours. And they would come to Austin, of course, to hear the high-level grievance. But what we proposed, and we're both really interested in doing, but it's kind of like the two boards need to get together and talk about the kinds of things that y'all want to do in partnership together. But we see a vision that brings the two boards, not the whole boards, but maybe a committee that's specifically set up for this to be able to hear any high-level grievance. But there is a hard stop about removal of students. That's one area where you have to come straight to me, and I actually would approve it or not approve it, and they have to honor my my decision.
Okay, thank you for that update. I would like to then amend the contract to include that language. We're on page 10 of the contract again. IDEA representatives and directors shall meet with AISD representatives and members of the Board of Trustees on a quarterly basis to report on the progress of the school and to address any matters of concern, with those matters such as a high-level grievance. I propose that as an amendment to this contract, yes.
Mel, can you just...
So we're the board is contractually, my understanding is it just a few members of the board? Is it all the members of the board of trustees for IDEA that would be contractually obligated to come to us and to respond to parents?
So, may I? So,
Dr. Christopher.
Mel, I know that, I'm sorry, Mr. Waxler, I know that, can you point me to the page, because I've got lots of papers up here, where we talk about the removal piece?
If you'll go to
Thank
page
you.
6,
Yes.
Dr. Karstafen, I think
Thank
it's
you.
number 10 on page 6.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
So, Ms. Barksdale, this is I know what you just recommended, but this is the more of the detail piece that I just described. And it does not specifically cover like what I heard you verbally say, like having the two, how many and all that. But I can't speak for their board and those sorts of things tonight. I mean, when we asked questions, or I got questions, I tried to do as much as I could before tonight. But again, it depends on what the board decides to do. I can take all of these types of issues, which we are noting, and follow up and, try to write addendums to the contract or something. But like how many board members, what the structure would be and all those things are just things I just need to sit down and continue to work out, which is why Mr. Waxler always says, all the details aren't in the contract, but if there are things that we want detailed, we can always, work to try to bring back. But for tonight's purposes, I know this is what I could get everybody to agree on for action in the contract tonight. If we're looking for agreement and a structure, I have to go work with them again and work that out.
So would it be fair to say that if the board gives you direction to go get an addendum to the agreement of some sort to deal with this issue of grievances? Because I think what is a challenge and has been one is that if we are saying, which I believe we are, that these are AISD students and AISD families, then their grievance rights shouldn't end with the IDEA board, they should end with the AISD board. And that's not clear in the agreement now. I think it's what you're saying the intent is, but I think it needs to be specifically called out in the agreement. If it's not there today, it probably needs to be an addendum. I think that's, and I'm going to look at my board colleagues to see if people agree with that impression or not.
I don't. I would like for it to be amended tonight. I'd like to vote on the amendment tonight, that this board is going to hold accountable the IDEA board to come to Austin to respond to family grievances on behalf of our students or their students. So I'm not looking for direction later. I think Trustee Lavoie made a very good point. This contract can either be strong or it can, and we can hope to get things right on the back end, or we can do the work to get it right now. It is important to me that anybody that we turn our kids over to is willing to be held accountable, and I would hope that the IDEA board wouldn't find this disagreeable, so I'd like to vote on it as an amendment.
Hold on, folks. Thank you. Ms. Bradley.
I do not disagree with Ms. Barksdale by no stretch of the imagination, but I do agree with what I heard you say. I believe that it should be both boards, but what I do believe is that we have to continue to remember that this school and that community will vote on a trustee to represent them. And to me, it is not fair that a board that is not elected and it is appointed would be the one that would hear a grievance or a concern for what we are still saying is they're our families and they're our kids. So I do believe the amendment, I agree with you. I believe that amendment should be there.
So let's get the wording, because we can approve it with that amendment, and then it can go to the IDEA family, and they can decide whether they accept that amendment or not.
Well, this is the one thing that I am going to have to say. Now, in my opinion, this is a non-negotiable for me. Now, this is just, I can support a lot of things, and I think I have been very, very supportive, but this is a non-negotiable for me.
Ms. Moya.
Thank you. I agree. It's a non-negotiable. What I'd like to know, though, is where in this agreement that we're looking at would be the most appropriate place to amend the contract. Is it page 6, item 10, or was it page
11.
Page 11? Help me. What was the item number?
Did
you say 11?
Yeah, page 11, top of
The governance section.
The governance section, page 10, section 3, item A, at the end of that paragraph that finishes on page 11. I just need to know where, I'd like for some direction to help us figure out where to put this, because I think it's important that it be in here. But the other thing is, I thought I read, and maybe I'm getting responses that I've read to and the contract mixed up, as far as things, like I thought it said in here somewhere that the IDEA board would come to Austin. And if it's in here somewhere, I can't find it right now. So I'm trying to figure out where would Ms. Barksdale's amended language go?
I would recommend that it go in two places.
Okay.
So on page 8, number 32, where IDEA agrees to, and then I would put.
So you're saying add a number
Add a
32,
32?
which I would agree with.
I'm saying
Okay.
add a number 32. I'm also saying add a number 14 on page 9. Same language for all intents and purposes, and that is AISD agrees to.
Add 14.
So IDEA agrees to whatever the nature of your amendment is. Same thing under AISD, so that it is reciprocal.
Okay, and the challenge is going to be, we got to get the exact words for that amendment to take place, or otherwise we direct you to get those words prior to signing the agreement and just rely on that.
And again, if you can come up with the exact words this evening, that'd be great, but if not, then just direction from the board to get the language straight based on the amendment would be sufficient.
Okay, so Mr. Guzman, I think, wants to weigh in on this as well.
Well, I was going to mention that before we go too far, since it's my motion, are we amending the motion? Okay.
Yeah, she would be amending the agreement, which is part of the motion for this particular component dealing with the grievance process.
I understand that part. So that calls for me to accept the friendly
But,
amendment.
yeah, I don't know that she's made the motion yet. Has
I
she?
mean, no, I'm just saying, before we get too far.
But, yeah, we got to get a second on the motion, then we got to decide if it's a friendly motion, then we got to vote on the amendment as a board.
But I have to accept.
Not necessarily. I mean, the board could choose to vote even though you may not choose to accept. Would that be true, Mr. Waxler?
That's
Right?
not
The
true.
board can choose to vote, and even though the maker of the motion may not choose to say, it's not a friendly amendment, it still can be voted on by the board to amend the original motion.
No.
It really depends on whether or not the maker or the second of the motion are willing to incorporate the amendment into the motion.
Thank
Right.
you.
If they
Right.
are, then no separate vote is necessary. If they're not,
Then it requires.
then a
Right.
motion to amend is required.
Okay, and I'm open at this time, but I would like to ask Ms. Barksdale
Yes.
that if I were to accept your amendment, would that suffice to gain support for my motion?
I have many more amendments to go, so that would be one of probably about 20. And let me answer that. Let me answer that, Mr. Guzman, because I see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from, and I'm going to just put this out front because it is becoming, over the past few weeks on this topic in particular, increasingly frustrating for me to have dissent, opposition, questions on this topic, marginalized as you don't have the best interests of children at heart. I absolutely do. And I think that anybody who may or may not support this agreement has the best interest of children at heart. And I think it is and I said this last week, it is my obligation as an elected board member of the Austin Board of Trustees to make sure this contract serves the district and its children well. Whether I support the amendment or not, that is my obligation. And I take that very seriously.
I understand. And I'm just asking you a question. If we go-
Hold on,
if we-
folks.
if we go-
The
if we-
board's trying to talk, please.
If we go through the process, whether it's 20 or 50 or 100 of hearing friendly amendments, at the end of all that, I mean, where do we get? I mean, is that going to
Okay.
suffice to?
I can answer that question. I think we get a better agreement for the district. I don't think it matters whether you get my vote or not.
It matters to me, because it's my motion.
Okay, then I think I will be able to answer that question at the end of this contract when we have a better contract on the table that I think better reflects what this district needs from a partnership like this one. Then I'll know, and I will answer that question very candidly for you with my vote. But really, I'm being respectful to Trustee Guzman here. I know it's not due normal to address our audience, but I think your question is very, very honest, and I think you're not trying to goad me in anything or back me into a corner, but my responses are very honest as well. I don't think it serves this board well or elevates us to have these litmus tests or these markers for accepting a motion or voting for a motion or not when it is our first responsibility to get it right for the district. That's my very honest and candid response.
The only thing I'm saying is if we go through the whole process and we don't get to where we need to be, then we've gone
Right.
through the whole process for what?
I think we've gone through the whole process
Well-
to
Okay,
make
hey,
sure we get it
folks,
right.
I think this point is She has the right to offer up her amendments. The board has the right to accept or not accept those amendments. And then we, at some point, we can choose, if the board so chooses, and there are maybe some things, and I'm going to use this as an example. I actually support this grievance process, and so I'd be interested to hear if there's some that may be beneficial. It may be that there may be others that I don't think would actually benefit the contract or that are not worth it at this
I
time.
mean, I can facilitate the response, because I accept it too.
Right.
But it was just my question about if we're going to have 20 amendments to the contract, when we get there, and so the contract should be pretty satisfactory to you at that time, because you've amended it 20 times. I'm just asking, would that suffice?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's, folks, for the sake of time, because it's 11 o'clock now, and we got an hour before we got to extend the meeting, and we do have still students in the audience and a lot of parents. So what I want, maybe Ms. Barksdale?
Again, Mr. President,
Yeah.
I thought we were going to vote on the contract on the table, up or down. And that's what I would like, up or down. I mean, if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. And now you're extending it
Well,
to
just
where we might have 20, 50, 60, 100 amendments.
Mr. Guzman, I just want to say, you've heard people say it's non-negotiable. So if we take it up or down, it's going to have an
No, no,
impact
no,
on people
but-
that decide on where their votes are.
It was my understanding that that's the way the process was going to be followed from you.
Okay, so if you're comfortable with that approach, and you'd like to, we could, because the
I'm in
board could
I'm
choose.
in favor of this particular amendment. I'm just saying that, I mean, we could go on and I'll stay here. And we could go on and hear 100 amendments, if that's the way you want to run the process.
Well, we've heard one. And so I guess the question is, and not knowing what the other 20 are, and it would be helpful to have maybe her lay out all 20 before we take a motion on any of them, and maybe we take them as en masse rather than individually.
I suppose.
So
But I-
therefore, we're
but
clear about which ones, because the
I
board
got a
could choose
feeling
which
that
ones.
Ms. Barstow has 20, and that's fine, and I think she's honest about it, but you're going to hear some more.
I think we will. And I think want people to make the motions, hopefully they're trying to make a better agreement, but also know that as we're doing this, we've got people in the audience and kids that we just have to understand the process continues. So let's make sure we're doing this for the right reason, to make a better agreement, and not to delay this so that we're making it more difficult to get it passed.
Well, again, that
So-
particular motion amendment, friendly amendment, I accept.
Okay, and so right now, we don't actually have the motion specifically, because we don't have the exact words, I don't think yet. Ms. Barksdale?
I want to, for the record, to say, and just as a retort or rejoinder to your comment just now, I have no interest in making anything difficult to pass. It is my obligation as a duly elected trustee of the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District to make sure this document is right. And I don't think it elevates us as a board to marginalize these sorts of questions as either part of delay or, not supporting. It's just, I don't get that. I don't get why we persist in that. It doesn't elevate us.
Ms. Barksdale, I just said I accepted your amendment.
I agree. I wasn't talking, my response
Okay,
was
Ms. Barksdale, my comment was not intended to reflect for you, is Mr. Guzman's comment about there could be many more. I'm saying as long as they're intended to make the agreement better and not intended to delay, I'm not trying to imply or interpret in any way that yours are trying to delay. I think you've laid one on the table that I've actually supported. So let's go through them.
Yes. I'm not ready to actually spell them out, but I will talk about, I will say what they address, right? Because we haven't had discussion on them yet. The first one was about grievances. The second is about, I will refer to a page. Just a second, it'll take me a second to get there. Let's see. Okay, I had a question to the administration, which again, the administration has answered. My question is, and this doesn't refer to a document that any of you may have, unless you have it in your folders that we got today. Will IDEA accept any student should space become available at any point in the school year? It is my understanding, and I am open to stand corrected, that in its current practice, IDEA school will accept students at the beginning of the school year, but that's it. Enrollment sort of closes at the beginning of the school year. If that's not the case, then, fine. But that isn't pointed out in the contract. So I would like to amend the contract, and again, if that is not IDEA's current practice, that wouldn't be covered in the previous language that says will revert to ideas, practices, I'd like for it to be spelled out that any student at any time should space become available at any point in the school year can enroll in IDEA if they live in the Martin attendance zone, if space should become available. Again, is that the current practice of IDEA? And if not, can we spell that out in the contract?
Am I supposed to answer?
Yeah,
Or I can go
I think
through.
we're looking at page 4C3.
So the short is that is their practice. They pull from the waiting list. And it's not in our contract, but it is their practice.
Okay.
But, you know,
If it is their current practice, and our language currently says, and actually I can go back, it would be my preference that I will go back to another amendment, so we can go back to, this is my additional number 2. If something is not spelled out in the contract, then it reverts back to the AISD policies and procedures, not the IDEA policies and procedures. It was my comment to the administration that I think it is incumbent upon our vendor to spell out exactly what they want enumerated in the contract, and then we can either accept or decline that. But if it isn't, because these sorts of agreements cannot possibly be exhaustive, that the district protect itself by reverting to AISD policies and procedures, and not that of a vendor, not that of a partner, I should say. Let me elevate you guys, not that of a partner. So that is number 1. Number 2, say again?
I'm sorry, wait, number
Number
2
one-
was about,
Number 2,
was the grievance.
okay, number 1 is a grievance, you're right. Number 2 is language in the contract that says that we do not revert back to IDEA policies and procedure, but as the contractor, we revert back to AISD policies and procedure. Because these agreements cannot be exhaustive, we should protect ourselves as a contractor and revert back to our policies and procedures.
So let's make sure we understand where that would go.
Okay,
So are you proposing in the governance section
governance, yes.
to modify the wording there that's basically, other than as providing the agreement, ideas should not be subject to any ASD policy or procedure to page 10, I'm sorry, section 3, item A. Just trying to make sure we understand, and then the board can sort of give an indication where there was a sense that the board certainly supported the first one. And what I think you're understanding, and I don't think the administration had an objection to the first one, right? On the
no
grievance
objection
issue.
to the first one.
So on this
We
one,
have very comprehensive policy. I don't know how many conflicts and things about actually delivering the program. That one's a lot larger. But where I thought you were going was the concept of if a student exits the program, that somebody can come in. So,
I've switched around too much. I
Okay.
can start over.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Okay, let me just start from the top, because I wasn't prepared to do this in that sort of way, so if you can just
Okay.
allow me this. The First Amendment, friendly amendment, it regards, addresses the grievances.
gotcha.
The second friendly amendment, I would hope it would be perceived that way, is on governance. Rather than reverting back to IDEA policies and procedures, if it is not covered in this agreement, then we revert back to AISD policies and procedures. There's no way this sort of contract can be exhaustive, and in doing that, it is my understanding we should proceed as the contractor to revert back to our policies and procedures if it is not spelled out here. That's number 2.
okay, Dr. Starfin, that's a different one.
That
And that's
one's-
a pretty
That's
substantial.
less, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Mr.
please.
President, trustee of the board, trustee Barksdale. That one is a lot larger. I mean, we don't have any, I mean, literally, we haven't gone policy to policy where there would be conflicts. So,
I think that's the point of the amendment for me.
no, I understand your point of the amendment.
Okay, so,
I think I can do onesies. That one's just a lot bigger.
Switch that.
so
and
would it,
right now
would the
it says
administration,
allow
maybe
as
Max Waxler, at this point, would y'all's recommendation be to not accept that one and let's let the board decide whether we want to accept that one or not? Or would y'all's recommendation be to accept
would-
that and then figure out how to deal with it?
On this one, I prefer, yeah, well, I think we can work through them, so, can I come back to this one? You keep going. Let me
Okay.
see if I can figure out a way to
Okay.
get us there.
Because I think, Mr.
Just-
Barksdale,
so
that's actually a
grievance,
very
we're kinda-
overarching one, right? That one's,
one's a
you
lot
got a lot
bigger,
of, you
so
got
let
some
me just
specifics like eligible
figure it
students. That one's very overarching, so maybe it's worth
That
it.
one is overarching, but I'm trying to go in order in the document, so that one came early.
Okay.
Okay. And again, because it is so enormous and so large, that is my point. There are so many things that we don't know. I think it's important that if we don't know at this point, before we sign off, that we protect ourselves and not leave it to, hopefully, an amendment later, or an addendum later. Let's see.
When do I get to say y'all didn't do this to RES?
Uh,
This is, I can't do this. They are completely.
And my next one, and I won't say numbers, but the next one was, I'm willing to forego that. Will IDEA accept any students should space become available at any point in the school year? If it is IDEA's current practice to accept students throughout the school year, that is fine, as space is available.
Yeah, I think,
Okay,
I think
that's
on
fine.
C3, it somewhat indicates that on page 4.
Okay. And my next question, again, it's just something to be spelled out because we just are going to be facing this on our own terms with different policies for AISD. Is admittance preference given each year to students that have previously attended IDEA because it's a lottery? So as you're promoted grade to grade, if you went to first grade in IDEA, is there a new lottery the next year? And then, you know, students may be in or I'll leave the question at that. Is admittance preference given each year to students that have previously attended IDEA?
Dr. Starvin?
And the answer is, oh, go ahead, I can,
Go ahead, you know
okay.
the answer.
Yeah,
I'd share
the
it
administration
with
has
you.
provided an answer. If the student previously attended IDEA, but thereafter left the program, but I didn't mean for kids who left the program, I meant like you were in first grade at IDEA, then you then go on to second grade at IDEA. With the current opt-out lottery system that we have, just wanted to make sure that it is clear that if you attend first grade at IDEA, you will also attend second grade at IDEA, you still have to opt out. Is that correct? If you don't want to go?
Okay, I'm not sure,
I think
students just, they keep continuing,
Okay,
it's like Ann Richards,
Okay.
right? It's a
Yes.
tracking unless you choose to leave.
exactly.
okay, it's tracking unless you're, okay. And then the answer says, exceptions to this would include migrant students or students dealing with custody issues. Does that mean exceptions to entry? What is that, I'm looking for the example, what that
Well-
exception means.
It's the same kind of exception we have in AISD, as y'all know. I mean, different custody agreements with family, I mean, they just require us to do different things, and you never know what a judge is going to give you. And then migrant students actually have, you know, special, I mean, I don't know, is it fair to say protections? That we just have to follow. So we just wanted to be clear that in those two groups, it may not look like the norm.
Okay, are those already covered by law then?
Yes, ma'am. We have lots of statutory guidance on those.
Okay, if those are already covered by statutory guidance, then I would withdraw any amendment on that. Next, are siblings given priority enrollment, or are they subject to lottery admission as well? The answer from the administration, in an effort to keep families together, IDEA gives siblings priority in enrollment pending space available at the requested grade. So does that mean that if there is no space available, students could be split for schools? They could be, one little guy could be enrolled in Allen because there was space available for them, but the other one, there was no space available in their grade, so the parents are faced with having their kids at two different schools.
Typically, I'm sorry, was somebody else talking?
Go ahead.
Mr. President, Trustee Board Trustee Barson, typically, what we've done in our, behavior is, even when schools are over-enrolled, as you know, that's part of our challenge, we go ahead and accept kids based on the way our own transfer policy piece works. And so IDEA's practice is to try to, allow for the sibling, to be in the school. So if there's a lot of interest, that might be another school in AISD where you would start seeing some over-enrollment. But our practice and theirs is to try to honor that for families so long as it's part of their policy, as it is with ours.
Okay, can we get that in the contract? That, I mean, I think to Ms. Trustee Lavoie's question, the try to, or sort of, or typically, in this case, I think what should be made stronger, if you live in the Martin or Allen's attendance zone and you opt in for one kid, it is my advocacy that your siblings would track in as well.
Ms. Bradley?
Yeah, hope with enrollment.
Dr. Karstafen, if this is actually focusing on attendance zone, wouldn't they automatically have admittance?
Yes, ma'am.
Because it would be what would happen if it was
It's their attendance area, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, and so in a way, I mean, I would say like, not fair to say that it's, Mel, it's not fair to say, is it, would I say it's part of the law, or what is it, our policy? What's the right way to describe it? I mean, y'all know the attendance zone structure, so
Well, but I
it's their
think
neighborhood school, so they get to go.
I think for Allen, yes, for Martin, not necessarily, because if everyone in Allen gets in because the number of kids are there, but if you're from Martin and the demand exceeds the space available, it becomes lottery within the Martin attendance zone.
Right, we use lottery, and then,
So I think the question is there priority
Sorry.
given to siblings, if you already have a sibling
Yes.
there within the attendance zone, the Martin attendance zone? And I think what you're saying is yes, and what I think we're saying, hearing is that the contract doesn't specifically call that out.
Right.
Ms.
I
Bradley,
think-
I don't know if I answered your question there.
No, I think I'm a little confused, because I thought we were talking about the children that were in the attendance zone,
we are for
right? Or are we talking about children that would be coming by lottery? What were you referring to, Ms. Barksdale?
I was referring to children that would be automatically enrolled in Allen unless they opt out, and I guess then they would track to Martin. So I am a mom, and I have a second grader that's going to be automatically enrolled in Allen, and I don't opt out. And then my second grader goes on to third and fourth grade. Now I have a kindergartner coming in. The kindergarten is oversubscribed. Does my kindergartner automatically get in because I already have another child there?
So,
Yeah,
Well, so they're automatically in.
if they're
Right.
in the
Because
attendance
it's
zone.
the
I'm in the Allen attendance zone, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and then the same is true for Martin?
Martin is based on lottery, based on space available. So if your child lives outside the Allen attendance zone, but is in the Martin attendance zone, it'd be based on space available. It's on lottery if the demand exceeds the seats available. So if I understand you right, if you're living outside Allen, say at the elementary school level, and
Right.
your child has gotten in via lottery or just because there's space available, and then you have a subsequent child that wants to go in, a sibling, I think what we're hearing is the practice would say, yes, that child would get priority admittance because it's a sibling, but it may be that the demand exceeds supply, so it might be a lottery. And then I think what I'm hearing is that there would be priority really in front of the lottery, that the children, the siblings of existing students would have priority, which is the way our AISD policy is. I mean, we have priority transfers for siblings. I think what I'm hearing you say is that you don't see it called out in the contract, and you'd like to see it called out
Right, for siblings.
for priority transfer for siblings.
And is it a transfer?
But no, that priority admittance, it's not transfer. Priority admittance.
Priority admittance, right.
Dr. Starfin, and then Ms.
Oh,
Mary.
no, I was just going to say, I mean, their practice is to, with their siblings, which is, I just want to be clear, I know what we do, but I just want to be clear about how they work, is when there's a sibling, and let's say it is at the secondary level, the sibling gets, they do not have to be involved in the lottery, they are allowed to go to the school.
Okay.
You don't put the sibling in lottery.
Okay. That's the practice.
That is how they do their work today.
Okay.
We have our own way of doing stuff that is our way.
Okay, for the sake of
So-
time, because we're at
Okay,
11:20.
so I'm sorry.
So I think we've got,
So if, I guess the question is, if clarified about the sibling thing, checking for understanding, you're saying be clear what happens to the sibling.
Right.
Okay. And I'm assuming y'all are okay with that. Y'all,
is everybody okay with
care about
priority
the
admittance for siblings? Okay.
Okay, the next series of questions or friendly amendments have to do with academic achievement. I mentioned last week that it is unacceptable to me that we would bring in a partner to do what it is that we're already doing in terms of academics. So I can make a global amendment, or I can go through one by one for each academic measure, that we remove globally from the contract, that our partner will do equal to AISD, and it's always better than or will exceed AISD performance measures, and we can go through what the ones that are listed in the contract. I understand that there are some things regarding STAR that haven't been determined yet, but I also know we can do some projection analysis to determine how well AISD students should do percentage-wise compared to someone else who's doing this better. So I would like to see us lay out or globally remove meets or as good as AISD. We're bringing in a partner that we're saying can do something better than we're doing academically. If we're not, I'm not sure why we need the partner. So I would like to make friendly amendments regarding academic measures that should exceed what AISD is already doing.
So can you please be clear about where you're proposing that amendment
Sure.
would be?
For high school campuses, the four-year graduation rate. For high school campuses, the four-year dropout rate. And these are measures I'd like to see where we remove the word meet. Because I think the most compelling argument being made here is we're not doing this, we can't do this, and someone else can do it better than us.
What page are
We
you
are
on?
not, may I?
Yeah,
Yes.
Dr. Stefan.
Mr. President, trustees of the board, trustee Barksdale.
Okay.
And just that, the last phrase that you used, that is not what we're saying.
Okay.
I mean, and I don't, that's never come from me, so I know that's something that, that you've said, and I respect your opinion on that, but that is not how we framed this. And I just want to be clear, even, again, Dr. Martyr, who's here tonight and has been very supportive of the research, has helped us think through and understand the pattern, the trend of how their growth model works and what happens in the first year and then what happens in the second year. And the meat piece is a lot about, you know, because you're taking kids who haven't seen school like this in a way, the way they work their culture and their design before. So the start year, as Dr. Martyr worked us all through to understand the patterns, is that the start year is the start year. And then it is in the very next year and the subsequent years that you see the big jump in attainment and achievement as the culture gets built. So it is there because we know that it is part of the design and the growth model and how the pattern for the model works. And so what I think is different, which is what, you know, I also shared with y'all, is that, you know, we're working with a partner that has its own mission and vision statement that speaks explicitly about 100% graduating and 100% you know, getting into college, which is much higher than anything else we say at our individual schools, except actually Ann Richards does have a goal statement that says 100% will go to college. So understanding that they have a model that has to get, that's grown in a particular way to get out of the box, that's what the meet and the exceed is. And so, you know, while we might want to propose only exceeds language, what we have said here is that we want to be sure that we're doing apples to apples comparisons, looking at the actual demographic groups and tracking the right stuff, and to ensure that, yes, we want them to exceed, but that, you know, doing the model itself is the baseline year. And like all things, including our own measurable outcomes in the strategic plan, our own board, you know, allowed our real-time performance to be our baseline year, and then we set targets against that, of which y'all did with me, I think before you were on the board, but it was as part of the strategic plan. So I've gone over this multiple times with IDEA and with Dr. Martyr, who has explained to us how the design plays out over time. And so I am asking that if you want the program to be successful and we use the model that they are able to work and implement well, that we, you know, give ourselves that space to allow them to meet and generally exceed, but some things will simply be met until the program gets off the ground. And I think without that, you know, we are making the model vulnerable. And that's a choice that the board has to make. But I will just say that I have explicitly talked about this and worked it over with, you know, with a, you know, third-party researcher who looks at these things and has helped us understand at least the behavior of the model and its implications.